Hello and welcome to the Dawn Jarvis Show, where our goal is to inspire you by interviewing a diverse range of visionary leaders and entrepreneurs and sharing their entrepreneurial journey. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Paul Jenkins, who is a clinical psychologist and specialises in the science and practice of positivity. We are going to be discussing how to get past the positivity that's fluffy and trite and go deeper with Dr. Paul to learn exactly what being positive is in all circumstances. And Dr. Paul has a two-step approach to open your mind to previously unseen possibilities and to choose happiness. Hello, Dr. Paul. How are you?
Hello, Dawn. I am doing better now that I'm with you. I've been looking forward to this. You were a guest on my podcast.
I was, yes.
And we had such a lovely conversation.
I know. And I have been looking forward to it because you are an amazingly positive person and you obviously practice that, and you've got a methodology for doing that, and I've never seen you with a frown ever. You're always really, really positive. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So the first question I usually ask my guests is, how did you get to where you are today? So I'm assuming, but you can tell me if it's different, that you did your psychology training and you had your psychology practice, but now you have got a podcast, you've got a community, you've got all sorts of things going on. So how did you get to where you are today?
I could start from, I was born at a very young age and take it from there. But it's interesting, Dawn, when you said I went through my psychology training, but I actually started at the university in chemical engineering.
Wow.
Which is completely different from what I'm doing now.
It is.
I've noticed this, though, about life, that you go along expecting a certain thing to happen, and then surprise, something else happens instead.
Yes, definitely. Yes, we have different seasons, don't we, of what we're doing.
And some people think that means that something went terribly wrong, but I think that's just how life is. Welcome to Earth. That's how we roll here. And so I've had a bit of a journey in that way. When I switched over to psychology, I found that I really loved having conversations with people about principles that can change their life.
Yes.
That can save and enrich their key relationships. That's what really lit me up. And I got into clinical psychology. I was a traditional psychotherapist for about 13 to 15 years in the early part of my career. I also did some yuck work, child custody evaluations for the court.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I bet you've got some tales to tell about that. Yeah.
I tell you what, these are bitter, angry, divorcing people who can't figure out how to share their kids.
Yeah.
And they taught me a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for that experience and that rich clinical and professional experience that brought me to where I am today. Here's what I noticed. Psychotherapy sounds just a little like therapy for psychos.
Well, I've never thought about it that way before, Dr. Paul, but now you've said it.
Well, unfortunately, Dawn, that makes it inaccessible to a lot of people who could really use the principles that allow us to go from being sick. So if you think of your mental health on a spectrum or a continuum for a moment, clear over on the left end is the sick end. Diagnosis, pathology, treatment, all that fun stuff. What's on the other end? And to understand that, if we go to the middle first, that's health.
Yeah.
Meaning not sick.
Yes.
Okay. You're in the healthcare industry and you know that you can be sick in bed with a fever, throwing up. There comes a time you can get out of bed and you're not sick.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you're truly fit, thriving, prospering. That's over here on the other end of the spectrum. And so the short story, Dawn, I noticed that there were a lot of folks who would make improvements saying, and get out of being sick from a mental health perspective. And then the insurance companies, the treatment plans, all that would end, and they're left here in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
So what I've done is moved my practice from the sick end of the spectrum, where I was for the first 15 years or so, over to the positive end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And there's some overlap in the middle. Okay, because everybody's got issues. Have you noticed?
That's true. And I'm based in the UK, and we have a little bit of a different healthcare model over here. But there's still that issue about accessibility,
right?
And whether people can get the help that they need. And I really like what you said, actually, about I have a philosophy that any health service, any service should be a health service, not a sickness service.
Right.
It's about maintaining good health, not necessarily. So we want to prevent ill health, and not to get, so people don't need the services for sick people, whether that's in mind, body or spirit, need to be there. But what will be better and more cost effective, whatever health system you're in, is to prevent people for being sick, isn't it, really? So I really like that you're at the other end about sustaining and maintaining that healthiness, because life is life and we all have issues, don't we? So
absolutely,
you're at that end.
Notice this too. It's important for us to realize that many of our common human experiences, and I'm going to use some clinical terms here just to catch your attention: depression, anxiety. Okay, these are things that are typically associated with the sick end of the spectrum. But how many humans do you know who haven't experienced depression or anxiety?
Not
or
many.
Stress or relationship problems or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're sick.
Yeah.
There are principles that will allow us to address. This is what I meant earlier when I said that, unfortunately, psychological treatment, therapy, is usually not even available to folks who aren't clinically diagnosable, even though they could really use some of the principles that we've learned. I love that my job is to illuminate the obvious, which is cool. I get paid to tell people things they already know.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. And a lovely way to work, isn't it? So you're just reinforcing things that they already know. Now, you say that happiness and positivity is a choice that we can make no matter what's happening. So I know that I've had times where I've not felt very happy or positive, and there's been things that have been out of my control. So how would you say that I could sort of like make some positivity out of that? I think I'm really interested in this, because I would really love to be able to do it and help others to do it as well.
There's a model. Let me just share the model with you that illuminates the obvious. Now, when I say illuminating the obvious, there's a lot of obvious things that are completely unnoticed up until I call them to your attention. Like your clothing. Can you feel it?
Yeah.
Well, now.
Yes,
it's obvious, but you didn't notice it until I called it to your attention. Or the fact that we're speaking English. Did you notice?
No, I didn't. You're right.
It's obvious now that it's called to your attention, but you don't notice these things. And what's going on in our mind, all of the processes that are there are obvious. As soon as I call them to your attention, I'm going to share two of them with you today on the podcast. You'll see them immediately, but they're unnoticed until they're called to your attention. That's why it's my job to call them to your attention.
Yeah.
Here's an example. I call it metacognition. Okay, now this is a fancy word that just, if you break it down, cognition means thinking. Metacognition is a higher level. It's thinking about thinking. Do you notice that you can do this?
Yes.
And be careful with it, Don. It can hurt you.
It might make your head hurt, I guess. Yes.
But notice that you can do it. You can think about your own thinking. Now, that's really important, because the two processes that I want to share with you are obvious, but unnoticed. And once you start thinking about your thinking, it puts you back into a position of choice. Now, Dawn, you said something earlier. There are things that happen in your life that you don't control. You didn't choose, right? Surprise, stuff just shows up for you. And so in the model, now I'm going to share a little visual model with you. I know that some of our listeners don't have the visual feed here. And so I want to provide this for anyone who's listening. Just go to drpauljenkins.com. That's spelled with a DR. And then do a little / Dawn, DAWN. And just remember my name and Dawn's name, drpauljenkins.com / Dawn. And I will give you a visual copy of what it is that we're talking about here, because it helps to wrap your head around it. Here's where we're going to start. It is what it is. Now, that can be a little annoying depending on who's saying it. But all it means is the way things are right now. So consider where you are, who you're with, what you have, your circumstances, your health status, your finances. It is what it is. Now, there's an important assumption before I share the two processes with you. What it is could always, now my editor tells me to always avoid the word always, but I just used it, okay? What it is always between better and worse. Is that true?
I think so. Yes, I do.
I do too. And I don't want anybody who's listening today, I don't want you to take this, our word for it here. Just run it through your own filters and see if that's true. Because if what it is always between better and worse, then no matter how bad things seem, it could always be worse. True?
Yes.
Now, is that true the other direction? No matter how good things seem, it could always be better.
Loving that. And that is, so I've got a visual, and Dr. Paul has shown us the card for the people who are listening, and you can get access to the card. But when you see the card, you can see that in your head, really, sort of like, so where you are, and what could, and it is what it is, what's happening right now, and what could be, it could be better and it could be worse, and that applies always.
Right. And on the visual model that you're referring to here, Don, I've put what it is right in the middle of a continuum. And over on the right side is better than what it is, and over on the left side is worse than what it is. And no matter what, it could always be better. It could always be worse. So that's where we're starting. Okay,
brilliant.
Now turn on your metacognition. Think about your thinking. When we experience anything, our mind automatically goes into one of two different modes that I'm going to share with you. Now, to set this up, let me just share with you, I told you before we started the recording that I'm heading down to Orlando, Florida, to speak at a conference this week. One of the last times I was there, I was speaking at a youth leadership conference in Orlando, and I was listening to one of my colleagues present when I got a text message. I wasn't going to pull out my phone in the moment because I was right on the front row, and that's just disrespectful. But I got a notification on my Fitbit, on my watch. So I looked down, and it's just a little short, truncated version. And it tells you who it's from, and you get the first sentence. Well, it said, it's from my sister, Melanie. And she said, I wanted you to know that Talon had an accident last night. He was on his annual volunteer first responder TIMP weekend. Now, TIMP is a mountain near my home. And he was a first responder up there. They were doing some training. And he slipped and fell from a 30-foot ...
Ooh, what a message to get.
And you know what ... means. There's more, but you don't get it here. You have to go to your phone.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go to my phone. That would be rude. But so I just waited for my colleague to finish speaking and then slip out into the hall to see what the message was. But in the meantime, I'm just thinking about this little family. Don, my father lost his dad to an accident when he was only 5 years old.
Oh dear.
A good friend of mine crashed his plane, small plane, in Utah Lake, a few miles from my office, leaving his wife and family without a husband and father. And now I'm getting this text from my sister about her son-in-law. Well, I slip out into the hall and I pull up my phone. Here's what the text said. I'll pick up where we left off. He slipped and fell off a 30-foot waterfall and broke both of his ankles and injured his knee. They could use your prayers.
Yes. Yes. You.
Yeah. Did you feel a little relief when I shared the rest of the story with you?
Because it could have been worse.
Absolutely. Now think about this.
Yes.
Think about what your mind is doing. This is where I get to illuminate the obvious. It is what it is. And what it is 2 broken ankles.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is your mind doing? Your mind is doing the first of those 2 processes. On the visual model, it's down on the bottom. Evaluation.
Yes.
And Dawn, you can't turn this off any more than you can turn off gravity.
Yes.
Okay. When's the last time you woke up and thought, I wonder if gravity's on today? It tends to be on either side of the pond.
Yes.
So, and this is like gravity in that you can't turn it off. So I want you to notice something. You are constantly evaluating.
Yes.
Or judging. That's another word that we could use for it. You evaluate or judge everything. You judge yourself.
Yes.
You judge your spouse. You judge your children. You judge your career. You judge the economy. You judge the government. You're judging me. It's cool. I'm judging you. Just notice that it's happening. And it means evaluation. So whenever anything happens, so go back to our story. Okay.
Yeah.
My nephew falls from a 30-foot waterfall and breaks both of his ankles. It is what it is. What is my mind doing with it? Judging it. Yeah. Is this good? Is this bad? What's going on? Okay. Now, before I got the rest of the text, my mind filled in the blanks.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So think about this. 2 broken ankles. Can you imagine anything better than that?
Yes, I can. 1 broken ankle or no broken ankle and a few bruises.
Yeah, right. Or even better, no injuries.
Yes.
Or even better, no accident occurs.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything goes just now. This isn't reality. This is our imagination. But when we take 2 broken ankles and we compare it to something much better, like no injuries at all, then how do we feel about 2 broken ankles? It's awful.
Yes.
Terrible, tragic, horrible, right?
Yes.
And you're always right about how you feel.
Yes.
How you feel is consistent with how your mind is doing this process that I'm sharing with you. So when we take what it is and we compare it to something better, we feel worse. Pretty simple. But you're getting ahead of me too. Can you imagine anything worse than 2 broken ankles?
Yes, I can. I can imagine
You're
lots
a
worse.
nurse.
Yes, I can. I can imagine lots worse. And I think what's really important is that the ... sort of like my mind went to all sorts of places.
Right. Notice that. Just notice it. You don't have to change what you're thinking, but notice that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, look at our feelings. Can you imagine anything worse than 2 broken ankles? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
And I helped you out with this because I told you where my mind went.
Yes.
Thinking of my dad who lost his father and my friend who crashed his plane. And now I'm thinking I have to go home for a funeral.
Yes.
So when we take what it is, 2 broken ankles, and we compare it to something far worse, like the death of that young father on Mount Timpanogos, then how do you feel about 2 broken ankles?
Pretty good and able to manage it. Yeah.
Now, isn't that interesting? You're feeling good about my nephew breaking both of his ankles.
Yes.
You sick
I'm so
person.
sorry.
Right? But Don, it's not that you're this unfeeling. I mean, you're one of the most loving, caring people on the planet, but you feel good about that because compared to something far worse,
mm-hmm.
you feel good about where you are. Now notice what it is didn't change.
Yeah.
2 broken ankles, it is what it is. So think about whatever your what it is. And I know that there's people listening today who are going through a divorce or a bankruptcy, or they've lost a loved one, or they just got that diagnosis. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And circumstances are neutral. By saying that, I'm not saying that circumstances are painless.
Yeah.
Or easy. I mean, 2 compound fractures
is bad news. Yes.
That's painful. Well, it's bad news compared to better news.
Yeah.
But it's good news compared to worse.
Absolutely. That's
so
amazing.
Just notice that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Don, when you set up our interview here today and you said we're going to talk about how to be positive no matter what.
Yeah.
The no matter what has to do with what it is. And it simply is what it is. It could always be better. It could always be worse. We can't turn off our brain judging it, okay, evaluating it. But what we get to choose is what standard we compare it to, which changes how we feel. So when we take what we've got, whatever it is, whatever you, dear listener, are going through right now, and you compare it to something better, you're going to feel worse about what it is. This isn't rocket science. It is psychological science. It's a different thing.
I love it. I do. Love it.
That's only half of the deal, though, because how we judge our what it is sets us up now for the other process. And I'm going to label that one creation. When you get the visual model, that's up on the top. And again, if you're listening and you want a visual copy of what we're referring to, drpauljenkins.com, spelled with a DR /Dawn. And I'll give it right to you. Okay.
Yes.
The visual copy. Creation is on the top part of this model. And now we're talking about creating what is to be. And that doesn't exist yet because we haven't created it yet. And we don't know. We don't know what's coming. How you doing next week, Dawn?
I don't know yet.
That's right. Now you've got something to do with it. Don't forget that.
Yes.
But you don't know. We don't know. So all we can do is use that amazing imagination of ours to predict or imagine or expect what is to be. And I want you to notice, remember, think about your thinking. I want you to notice that all of that is imagined because you don't know.
Yeah.
You have some creative power. What if I gave you a challenge? In fact, all of the listeners, as you're listening in today to Dawn's brilliant podcast, What if I gave you a half hour to go out there and somehow make your life worse? You're chuckling. Why?
Because I think it would be fairly easy to do, but I think your instinct would be not to do it.
Well, you would never do that on purpose.
Yes, that's right.
We do it accidentally all the time.
Yes.
Because we're powerful creators. But look how quickly your amazing imagination can come up with a half a dozen ways to pull that off. And it wouldn't even take a half hour, would it?
Yes.
Now, I want you to notice that, because if you can make up 6 or 7 or 20 or 50 ways to make your life worse, this is good news. Because if you can make a mess, you can make, period.
Better.
Now, what we make, that's our choice.
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we even get to the actual making of it, the creation, this is something I coach people on all the time, because they come to me wanting to have a better life, better relationships, right? Yes. And we can do that. We totally have the power to create that. But first, before anything is ever created, we have to imagine it. The things don't just pop into being. I've got this dry erase marker here on my desk. It didn't just magically appear. No. Somebody thought it up. Somebody imagined it first. Okay, so imagination is an important first step in the creation process. But before we even get to making it, how do you feel? Focus on the feelings for just a minute. When you imagine or predict or expect that what's coming for you is even worse than what you've already got, how do you feel?
I feel like I should take steps to prevent that happening. And I feel scared.
Right.
So I don't want that. Yes.
Nervous, anxious.
Yes.
Okay, Dawn, this is 30 years of clinical experience in a nutshell. Anxiety.
Yes.
It's when we imagine that what's coming is worse.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
How clear is that?
Yeah.
Because we're expecting. Now, we don't know what's coming, but when we imagine that it's going to be worse than what we've already got, we feel anxiety. Going back to the visual model, it is what it is. If what's coming is even worse, we're going to feel worse. And we don't know. We're just predicting that. So alternately, how do we feel when we imagine or predict or expect that what's coming is even better than what we've already got? How do we feel?
A lot better, a lot smilier, a lot happier, and looking forward to the future.
Absolutely. Do you see it?
I do.
We don't know what's coming. When we imagine or predict or expect that what's coming is worse, we feel anxiety. When we imagine or predict or expect or anticipate that what's coming is even better, we feel hope. We feel excitement. And hope, by the way, is the #1 preventative factor for suicidal thinking or behavior.
That's really good. Yes, and makes a lot of sense. And when you lay that on the sort of like, you know, what you would want to achieve for somebody who's got mental health problems, you want them to have hope for the future and to be planning towards it as well. So that is really very important.
This is why, Dawn, we can choose positivity no matter what.
Yes.
Our circumstances simply don't matter. That's just the weather report. That's the context in which we get to choose how we evaluate our current situation and how we're going to anticipate creation of what is to be.
Love it.
And we can get into that I call it the positivity vector.
It is.
And that's the model. That's the
model. And it's a fantastic one. It's a fantastic one. Thank you so much for taking us through that. I learned a lot
You're
in
welcome.
that. And what I usually ask people at this part of the podcast is, how do you stay positive and productive and focused, and how do you sort of manage your own health and well-being? Because it's quite it can be stressful. Life is stressful to do that. But I think you've just told us. So do you utilize your own model to keep yourself focused, positive and productive, and think about any health or well-being issues that you may have?
Yes. And there's an interesting word that we in the healthcare industry have used to describe our business.
Yeah.
It's called practice.
Yes.
Now that is significant. Okay. I practice positive psychology, meaning that's my business. That's my area of focus from a clinical perspective. But also, what do you do when you practice the piano, or when you practice some new skill? You repeatedly put yourself in a position to apply it and practice it, because this is what programs our mind to actually make that part of our default.
Yes.
And until we practice it, we go back to whatever we're already programmed to do.
Yeah, and it has to be continuous, doesn't it? It has to be, even if you feel better, you have to carry on doing it. I think, and that's something I've been focusing on, is that I wrote on social media, I was helping my daughter how to poach an egg, and then I was thinking about how many times I've poached an egg, so now I can get it absolutely perfect. But it doesn't always get, but I'm changing things all the time, and I'm practicing how, now I'm practicing, what's the perfect poached egg, for example. And that was sort of like a little teaching moment I had with my daughter about, you need to practice it to carry up.
Right.
Yeah.
If you don't practice it, you'll just naturally go back to whatever it is that you're already programmed to do. And notice, when I say programming, I'm talking like language, for example.
Yes.
You were programmed to speak your native language.
Yes.
By people who didn't give you a choice.
Yes.
Right? And so it comes very naturally to you. Now you can learn a different language.
Yes.
Totally available. There's like hundreds of options.
Yes, there is.
And I did that. I learned Finnish. I'm fluent in Finnish.
Yes.
I lived in Finland for a few years, and I can speak Finnish, but it was not easy.
Yes. And you had to practice it.
I got to practice a lot. It takes there's two important elements: choice and repetition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have to choose it first. If you don't choose it, you'll never learn it. Same thing with positivity. Okay. You have to choose it first, or you can just keep doing whatever you're doing. But once you choose it, that's not sufficient. It's like choosing to play the piano.
Yes.
Or choosing to speak Finnish.
Yeah.
All right. You got to put in the reps. You might want to hire somebody to help you with it.
Yes.
You might want to schedule some time to actually practice it. And so when you ask me, how do I do this? I practice.
Yes.
Every day. This is all I do. It is my practice.
Yes.
Okay, but that makes a point. And I am really good at positivity. In the martial arts, I'm a black belt.
Yeah.
In positivity. Okay, but I've put in the reps. So
definitely. Now, you've written books about this. This is, as you said, part of your life. And I want you to tell us a little bit about the books you've written. And we're going to put the link to the actual model that Dr. Paul has offered to share with the listeners. And we'll also put links to his books as well. But do you tell us about that?
Thank you, Dawn. I've captured what I've shared with you here today in a little mini book called Portable Positivity.
Cool.
And there's a .com for that. You can go look it up, or you can find it on my website. When you get the model, drpauljenkins.com/Dawn, just remember our conversation here today. That will connect you to the visual model that's also described in this little mini book. And then I've fleshed it out a bit in the big book, Pathological Positivity.
Cool.
Which is really this, you asked me earlier, Dawn, about my journey.
Yes.
And chapter 1 in Pathological Positivity is titled Lightning Strikes.
Yes.
And this is my story of how I connected to the principles of positivity as a professional psychologist. This was about a decade ago when I went through the most difficult period of my adult life, ended up in a bankruptcy, not what I had in mind. Okay. And I had to test these principles. I titled it Lightning Strikes because you're going along through life. It's just like surprise,
Yes.
But you think you've got things together. You think you know how things are going to play out, and then zap, you get struck by this thunderous bolt of lightning, and you get to test these principles. I got to test them personally. So this is my personal connection to the principles that I teach professionally. And this had a lot to do with shifting over from traditional psychotherapy, as we were talking about earlier, over to the positive psychology practice that I have now, where I write books, I do podcasting, I'm speaking, I've got a YouTube channel. There's a lot of ways to share these principles now in a positive way. So you don't have to come and see me and get a diagnosis and bill your insurance company.
Yes.
It's all available on demand, really.
Yes.
And
YouTube, it is wonderful.
Podcast.
Because you also have a community, don't you, as well, and the podcast and the YouTube channel, and it's sharing this. And I think a lot of people, that might be the first step in their journey to sort of like, to maybe think about things in a different way. And I really like the way that you've said that quite succinctly and in a way that's easily shareable. And as I said, that we'll put all the links for everything onto the show notes, and both on the podcast and on YouTube and on my website as well. So it's been so fab talking to you, and
always a delight.
And what is there one thing that you want to share with the audience that they can take away and action today? I think you've made it very easy, but is there sort of one thing that if they don't remember anything else that they can do?
How about I share 2?
That'd be brilliant.
Because I've shared with you 2 processes that your mind is doing: evaluation and creation. You're doing both. So I'm going to give you a little brain hack for both of them.
Cool.
All right. For evaluation, it's gratitude.
Yes.
There is abundant research on this topic. Gratitude gets us into a positive evaluation of what it is faster than anything. But here's what I would encourage you to do. Remember 25-5. All right. This is an exercise I give to all my clients. 5 meaning 5 days, starting today. Make a list of 25 things in your life that you're sincerely grateful for.
Yes.
And don't make it up. You have to actually be grateful for it and put it on the list. Okay. But here's what powers it up. Oh, and don't repeat anything on tomorrow's list that's on today's list. Whole new list tomorrow. 5 days in a row. Okay.
Yes.
And if that seems like a lot, it used to be 100 every day. So
oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah.
See how your brain was evaluating that?
Yes.
We can't turn it off. It's constantly happening. All right. So 25 things. Now, at least half of your list every day, that's 13 if you're doing the math, at least half of your list every day is about the hard stuff.
Yes.
It's easy to be grateful for the good stuff, the easy stuff, the pleasant stuff. Okay. Puppies and rainbows and indoor plumbing.
Yes.
Yeah. You get 12 of those every day, but 13 every day need to be from your hard list. A diagnosis, a challenge, a financial problem, a relationship that's troubling you. Go there. And I'm not saying you have to be grateful for the diagnosis. cancer, for example, hit our family a couple of years back, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. My sister-in-law, a couple of months from diagnosis to funeral. I mean, what if it's cancer? I'm not saying you have to be grateful for the cancer. I'm saying look inside of it, open it up, peel it back and see what you can find in that that you are grateful for. And I found a relationship with my niece, 20 years old, special needs. We got to have her live with us for a couple of months while her mother was passing. Now, I am grateful for the relationship.
Yes.
All right. Am I grateful for the cancer?
No.
Well, that's harder, but that's where I found it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
You do the heavy lifting. The biggest mistake most people make on gratitude exercises is they only list the easy stuff, the pleasant stuff. I want you to dig deep, okay? Do some heavy lifting, get in to your hard stuff, find gratitude from that. So that's the first one. Here's the second one, and this has to do with the creation side of our model. How sure are you that 8 o'clock is coming?
Yeah. That's something to think about.
It shows up every day. Okay.
Yeah.
How sure are you that you'll be around for 8 o'clock?
Yes.
Almost as. All right. You've made it to every 8 o'clock so far your whole life. And there's 2 every day, depending on how you read your clock. So there's only 2 options, Dawn. I used to think there were 3. I've taken out the third one because I don't think things could be exactly the same at 8 o'clock as they are right now.
Yeah.
At the very least, you're going to be a little older.
Yes.
Okay. So notice that. And here's the second brain hack. I call it BB-8.
Okay.
But it goes along with the name of the droid from the Star Wars movie,
okay,
for those of you who are Star Wars fans. But BB-8 simply stands for better by 8.
Oh, love that.
Now, do you remember the little challenge I said? Hey, can you take a half hour and make your life worse?
Yeah.
You know you can do that. Please don't make your life worse. BB-8, what could you do? Think of some ideas to make your life better by 8.
Yes.
And I'm not talking next month, next week, or next year. 8 o'clock. Okay. It can be something small, something big. It's up to you. It's your creation project.
Yes.
But just identify, what could I do to make things better by 8?
Lovely.
How does that feel?
It feels great. Yes. And it's a definite thing. How many things by 8? Is it one thing or more than one thing?
Just think of something you could do to make the
Yeah.
Now, if you'll do this for the same 5 days, you get to have 10 upgrades to your life in that time period.
That's amazing. I
So
love
do them
that.
both. The gratitude exercise, remember 25-5, 13 every day about your hard stuff.
Yes.
And then we're doing better by 8.
Lovely.
And whatever you come up with, that's your business.
Yes.
Those 2 brain hacks, you can immediately apply those to implement what we've talked about here today with that positivity model. You're going to notice some changes in how you feel. And it's like Wayne Dyer said once. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's powerful.
Very powerful. Thank you so much, Dr. Paul. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed today. Lots to think about, lots to do. And that's it for the Dawn Jarvis Show today. If you, like me, have been blown away with what we talked about today, make sure you get the model at drpauljenkins.com/Dawn, and also check out his books, and like, share and subscribe. Let us know how you feel about what we've done today. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.